We're live.
I'm not sure what happened then.
Well, we just went live. Hello, everyone.
Did you? Hello. Did we're waving at ourselves at the moment, gents.
Oh, good.
Did you have a countdown on your screen?
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh, right.
it said Mike is muted.
Yeah. Mine just went from talking to countdown. But what? And everybody blanked out. I said, what?
How rude. How rude. Welcome to the one viewer. And welcome, gentlemen.
Hey. Well done.
Hello.
We are a man down. Alan, if you're watching or listening, either now or in the future, we are cursing you now. He's got a very important family engagement that he needs to attend to, so absolutely understandable. But here we are. We are the pirate, the cowboy, and the piggy, and that fits now because there's three of us.
Yay!
I'm going with the. I'm taking the piggy. You're the pirate, Steve. So I'm afraid, Tom.
Oh, yippee-ki-yay, right?
Yippee-ki-yay, MF.
Gonna have to be Shame.
But welcome to the pirate, the cowboy, and the piggy. I don't know if that's going to be a name. I don't know if that's going to be a thing. We haven't really discussed it over the week, have we? We had a flurry of activity of suggestions for a name, and then didn't use it. Hello, Terry Dewitt. Hello, chaps, he says. And we also have in the house Friends of General Haig. Ahoy!
Hello,
Speaking your language, Steve.
Ahoy.
I know Friends of General Haig from Twitter, actually.
Shiver me timber.
Yeah,
Shiver.
hello, mate.
Shiver me timber.
Do either of you know an American singer-songwriter by the name of Tom Waits?
Yes.
Okay, he's got a song called Shiver Me Timbers. And every time somebody says that, I always want to burst into song.
Fantastic.
But I will refrain, Steve. I will refrain.
Thank you.
Because having a podcast, YouTube live video, whatever this is called, with the title of The Pirate, Shiver Me Timbers is going to be quite a frequent. He's very good in Dracula. He is. He plays the character in the prison cell, doesn't he? That's eating maggots and worms and things. That's
That's cool.
yeah, that's the Gary Oldman version. Hang on, there we go. I must remember to pop these comments up because I can read. Can you see a comments section on your screen or not?
I can see them when you actually pop them up.
Yeah, but you haven't got a comment section down the side of your screen. Okay.
Well, I get it during the show, but I can open it up. So
we're still learning the technology, guys. It's.
I might have to press something technical to do that.
No, don't, because we might lose you.
yeah, that's what I did last time.
So
last time I just sit there for like 20 minutes going, where is everybody?
I know. It's getting a bit lonely.
I'm here, but nobody else is here. Like, what? Join the group button. That's what I missed. I mean, actually scroll down and actually.
Yeah,
Easily done though.
Gentlemen, we are into the difficult second episode. It's normally the second difficult album, but we are into the difficult second episode, and we've already lost one member, as I've said. Although hopefully Alan will be returning. So, how are we, guys? Are we all right?
After you.
I don't think I should answer that.
I'm all good this then, thank you.
Steve's feeling a bit grumpy.
I am feeling very grumpy.
He's on medication consisting of
medication and alcohol,
paracetamol and alcohol to take the pain away. But he's here. He's a real trooper.
Here.
He's not lying on his chaise long with his hand on his forehead going, oh.
Hang on a second. I am lying on the sofa.
Oh, you are on your chaise long. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Well, they didn't call me the lazy pirate. Nothing, don't they?
No, well, that's right. The
I'm in
lazy
my-
pirate.
I'm in painting position.
Your
This is-
usual painting position.
This is my usual
Indeed.
painting position. My modeling.
Last week
position.
we were honoured, weren't we, to find you elsewhere,
Actually sat in the office, sat up,
upright and breathing.
That's why I couldn't do any painting, really.
You weren't in any normal position.
Wrong angle.
In my normal lazy
Uh,
position.
Yeah. So less of Steve's health. Tom, how are you?
Yeah, all good, thank you. Been making plans upon plans upon plans. So
We love plans.
We love plans.
Mm.
yeah.
Plans are dangerous for wargamers
Very dangerous.
because it
Yeah.
generally costs money.
Hang on a
Big
sec.
money,
Sean
yeah.
hasn't been involved in these plans, has he, Tom?
No, I shall not be blamed. I shall not be blamed. For that.
I can't pass blame, but I can definitely elicit some help.
Yeah. Well, your interest in the 100 Years' War certainly predates this effort.
It
Should we
does.
call this an effort?
An effort? Yes.
I feel
Oh,
like
definitely-
because
definitely
I've
an
got
effort.
a fan. I've got a fan just the other side of the computer screen, and it's sort of blowing my hair. It's a bit like one of those Timotei adverts where I have to shake my hair and
Hair.
look all.
We have hair.
Look, look.
We have hair, Jake.
Not cool.
Come on.
Not
come on,
well,
Jake.
no. But,
Come on.
listen. I'm beating you to the punch with the beard jokes
All right, yeah.
Oh, there we go.
because I've received
We're gonna
more
be
than
nice.
one. I've received more than one comment that my facial hair isn't up to scratch compared to you two and Alan. Okay, so we've had a good week. That's good. We are a paint and chat podcast. We may not continue on a Saturday night, but for now, I think it's fitting in okay. Hopefully, an hour and a half to 2 hours of drivel will be discussed.
Plenty of
So
dribbling.
We're dribbling now. Oh, drivel.
Plenty of dribbling. I can tell you that for sure.
Drivel, not dribble.
Right.
Friends of
Definitely is
General
like
Haig
ZZ
says
Top there, yeah.
it's like ZZ Top. There you
Yeah.
go.
Hell yeah.
Who am I
Got
then? Who am I? The roadie.
The groupie.
The roadie.
Yeah.
The groupie. That's even worse.
Yeah.
What a thought.
Never mind. Let's put that from our minds.
Yes, let's quickly.
Moving swiftly on.
Moving swiftly on, yes, as an old, very well-loved podcast used to say. So we are a paint and chat podcast, which would seem to indicate that we are going to paint tonight. So let's start with you, Tom. Hang on. There we go. Let's start with you, Tom.
Yes.
Actually, before you do that, I wanted to. We should have done this off air, but listen, professionalism isn't our byword. So
No.
what I thought about doing was saying, I'm going to pass you a paintbrush. And then, so it disappears off my screen. And then, come on, Tom, you need to work with me here.
Hang on. I was going to make sure I don't lose the live stream now.
Right.
Right. What colour are we going for? White, are we?
White, yeah. I'm passing you this paintbrush.
Right.
So here we go. It's
This
coming.
side.
It's coming.
Ready?
Yeah. No,
Oh, too
lower.
high.
We'll practice that.
Right.
We'll practice
dear.
that. I thought,
Right.
particularly when there was 4 of us, I thought it'd be good to pass it around the screen.
Yeah.
The passing of the paintbrush.
Excellent. Well, I've got some.
Oh, we've got Little Legions in. Hello, Little Legions. Now, Little Legions has got his own YouTube channel, which everybody should go and subscribe to immediately this podcast
Definitely.
finishes. Not
Fantastic.
don't leave the
Not
live
this
stream.
second, please. Yeah.
Not this second, but you should go and check out his. There we go. I keep forgetting whether I've pressed the button or not. But excellent YouTube channel, and he's recently put up some lovely pictures of a 6mm Desert Rommel game, which has really made me curious. Now,
Have you seen his
say again.
bunker?
His
bunker that he's building.
bunker? No,
Have you seen the Wargaming bunker that he's building?
no,
Oh my. Oh my, oh my.
really.
Very nice.
Oh, I must have missed that.
Look.
Yeah, I will. The Rommel game that he set up. I don't know if you played it through Little Legions or you just set it up to have a look. I was going to take you down the club, but Rommel has intrigued me. Are you both of you aware of the Rommel rule set?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
Sam
it's-
Mustafa.
Sam Mustafa, yeah, and it's sort of a grand tactical, almost strategic level game where I think a base is a company of figures or vehicles.
That's cool.
So it's really sort of zoomed out. He says a huge amount of work for a posh shed. Well, a shed is a shed, and if it's a wargaming shed, it's a posh shed in my book. And just how he's laid it out on the table is this. There you go. A base is a company. Thank you, mate. It just suits the desert scenery and terrain really well on how he's laid it out. And the sort of villages, towns, whatever, the settlements are just a couple of buildings, but it's almost really zoomed. It's almost as though you've taken the helicopter view of the table and just gone upwards. So everything is reduced in size. But
It's brilliant.
do I need another project?
Of course you need another project. Are
Always.
you a Wargamer man?
I am. Unfortunately, a war gamer. This week, I've had reason to question that as to why. Hang on, Alan. Hello, mate. So you're actually starting to collect some 6mm World War II, Steve, aren't you? From 2D6.
2D6 war games, yeah.
They're
Based
very
about-
nice, aren't they?
That's for O group. Preparing O group. So
But the bases could easily be used, couldn't they, for Rommel? I think. Is it a square base or a rectangular base?
it's I think they're rectangular. I'm using the what I'm using. Flames of War. Here you are. The Flames of War small size base. So whatever that is.
Right. Okay. But yeah, so
What
that
they
base
use
size could easily be used for
Yeah.
Rommel,
That's
couldn't
no
it?
re-
I'll
that's
put
no
my
reason why
glasses
not.
on. So, Friends of General Haig says just subscribe to Laurie. That's good news. Alan is on a break from balloons. Need to get some more wind in your lungs, Alan. Come on, keep that puff
Blow,
going.
man. Blow.
Yeah,
blow.
blow.
Get on with it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Little Legion says, what does Little Legion say? Hang on. There it is. I haven't played it yet, but can't wait to give it a go. I have grand plans for the Eastern Front. Well, I personally think, and my take on this is that it's either desert or Eastern Front that Rommel would work best with it, in my eye. I know Little Wars TV did the Normandy beaches, and that looked fantastic. Really did, really good. But if I was going to do Rommel, I think it would be Eastern Front or desert, most certainly.
I definitely do desert myself. I love all the early war tanks and that.
Yeah, the sort of
early war
41,
British
42.
tanks. Oh, brilliant! And the smaller size Panzers.
Or Italians even in the early part.
Yeah, or Italians. Yeah,
Yeah,
I love
Italians
all
are
that
good.
stuff.
Friends of General Haig just clarifying. He said he just subscribed to Laurie. He actually meant Little Legions. Well, I suffer more than most with fat finger syndrome, so I sympathise with you.
Oh yeah, you did take some very interesting posts the other day. On the
I did,
messenger.
didn't I? Yeah. Yeah, that was an honest and genuine slip of the finger.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We'll
Which
keep
is
it
what-
between us, mate. Don't worry.
Which is apparently what Matt Hancock said to Boris Johnson. But anyway, we won't get political. Tom, tell me what you're painting.
What am I painting? So I am currently painting some Claymore castings, Cressy era. I think these are Men at Arms. I was actually sent these by a chap that I was talking to on Instagram, a guy called Mike. Let's see if we can.
They are beautiful figure. The Claymore stuff is gorgeous, isn't it?
It's amazing, isn't it? So these, we actually got chatting because he was my 500th follower on Instagram, and he sent me these 3 little chaps. And although with the Stark Light, all they're coming across as is black and silver. That's mainly all these 2 are, is black and silver at the moment.
Yeah.
But on the spinny wheel is a couple of the others that I've picked up. So this is the beginning of this aforementioned plan. That's probably the word to go with.
This counterfactual imaginations idea.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'll go into a bit more detail on that in a minute. So I'm painting up. So I think I mentioned last time that I got the King Edward figure and those the notes I showed. It's a Father's Day gift. But I thought I'd start off with the ones I've had set around for a few months, and then move on to the ones that I've been bought as a gift. Once I've kind of got. So once I found my feet with painting them, because I want to try out making just a slight more effort for the King's base of men. But yeah, we've got. I can't get them off the blue tack down behind the tab, so can't quite reach them. But yeah, there's a few that have been primed up together. But tonight I'll mostly be trying to paint these 3 chaffies with the red grass, whatever it is, 360 handle, which seems to only cause my hand to cramp after about an hour of painting. So I might stop all of a sudden and give up. But yeah, so that's
what's the substance on top of there that grips the figure, Tom?
It is just a type of, I don't want to say expensive blue tack, but it might as well be. Got a spare pack of it here to grab another. It is just a very tacky, not cheap tacky, but very very sticky substance. But it is very much like a blue tack. So it's I think it's just would very easily be replaced with blue tack. But that's all that is. But it's quite resistant to paint. I mean, I've primed models on the handle, and then you just squish it around a bit, and it's just discolored it a little. But yeah, I mean, I think just a blob of blue tack would do exactly the same job. I just got caught up in the whirlwind of I have some money and there's a Kickstarter for something that looks fun. So,
who was it by?
So it's Red Grass Games.
Right. Do they do the wet palettes as well?
Yes, they do. Which is how I ended up.
Oh, Steve's got one as well. Oh, I'm feeling most inadequate.
Got the little orange one.
Right.
Yeah.
I've got the wet palette. I got loads of the extra caps.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the wet palette's pretty handy. I mean, where I've moved my painting desk, I call it the office. It's not. It's my bedroom, but it's my corner of the bedroom that's mine. To be an absolute tip. The room we've got a huge skylight that just turns this room into a sauna after a day's heat, and it's the wet palette makes quite a big difference because I can actually have paint that doesn't dry in less time than it takes to get it to the model. So yeah, that's pretty handy. But
so Alan is telling us he's got a wet palette and one of those handles too. So I am clearly off trend.
It's all right. So I've got a couple of the GW, the first iteration of their Games Workshop Citadel handles.
Yeah,
I've got 5 of those, and I do find them a bit easier to use. But after I must have had them 2 years now, maybe 3. The springs have become quite loose, so I've had a few models fall out mid painting session, which is not ideal, really.
No, not at all. No.
But yeah, so
we've got Alex with us from Storm of Steel. Hi, Alex. Hope you're well. Hope you're painting.
Hey,
his video content at the moment is just exceptional. Seems to be churning things out quicker than.
Yeah. What's his Ogre game? His Ogre game last night.
Yes, I haven't watched that one yet. I've seen the.
You're missing out. It's good.
Oh, really? Okay, I can't wait to watch that. Yeah.
Especially talking about the Eastern Front, because it was I know it's not quite Eastern Front, but it's CeeLo Heights, wasn't it? The recent one.
Yes.
So that was cool.
It was
and I'm a massive fan of Water Tanker, so I was most pleased watching that one. So.
Yes, I'm sure. Yeah, it's excellent content. So thanks for joining us, Alex. Friends of General Haig says, nice wet palette.
Cheers.
The only time, I don't know where I've said this before, and please tell me if I've told you the story already, but it may have been on the podcast, it may have been on here, but the only time I've used any sort of wet palette was when a couple of years ago we were away in Germany with friends, and it was baking hot. It was in the low 40s. It was breaking all records for Germany's temperature during the summer. And I'd taken some figures to paint, and I was out on the patio at the back, and the paint was literally drying as it came out of the bottle. Goodness. I thought, well, that's ridiculous. I'm sure I've read somewhere where you can make your own wet palette. And fortunately, in the house that we were renting, I found a bit of sponge. I found some greaseproof paper, or baking paper. Baking paper.
Sure.
And a little box to put it in, and it's actually worked incredibly well with the water soaked into it. So I was convinced at that point that wet palettes are the future, but I've never returned to it since. So,
do you know what the thing I found with mine is that even though the Redgrass game one sort of sells itself as the everlasting wet palette, and then it doesn't get sort of moldy or whatever, I ended up sort of not painting for a good 6 months, and I came back to the wet palette, and it definitely had a funk to it.
Right,
it was not a pleasant one to come across. So it's do you know what? It's a bit of a trick that obviously they've pulled, that you've got to buy their sheets and their foam pads, but once they've got their new set coming out, and by the end of that, I'm just going to be sticking sponges in this one and using the baking paper, because it does work.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
What's interesting to me is that
I'm the same here. I've got the
go on.
I've got the army paper one.
Oh, the army paper.
Cool.
Yeah.
So there's a chap on,
and I
YouTube,
really use it because carry on.
No, go Steve. Go on. Sorry.
Oh, basically, I only use the wet palette when I'm using my dropper bottles.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I was going to say, there's a chap on YouTube who does painting videos called Dr. Faust's Painting Clinic.
Oh yeah, he's been around for years, hasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. He, I think it was last year, he put out a video on what he does for his, effectively his chilled, I can't remember what he called it, but it was not quite a wet palette. What he does is he gets a tile, as in, the one that I think we probably all at some point have used or do use for our palettes. Just uses a bathroom tile, but he puts it in a shallow Tupperware box.
The Billy Gate one.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and then he, I think he said he's putting cold water in it, and it helped create that convection of cool sort of air over the over the tile, and it meant that the paint lasts a lot longer, and he didn't have to worry about getting the right paper and getting all the sponges to work. But it's it was fascinating seeing sort of how he got that going. And I tried it. I did try it and ended up just spilling water everywhere. I can't be trusted with water, apparently.
I'll check that out and maybe put something up in the show notes. Friends of General Haig says he's just backed their new palette and reusable membrane. That's the new red grass one, isn't it? I think.
Yeah,
it's just gone live. Alex says,
I missed out on that.
Glad you liked the battle reports. The effort was worthwhile, Alex.
Definitely.
I know you put a hell of a lot of work into them, so well done on them. Steve, if you can fight through the pain,
Is that brush going over?
Yeah, we need to practice this, don't we, next time?
Only if you've got a black one, because I haven't got a white one.
All right, okay.
Yeah,
we definitely need to prepare better.
No. By the way.
I've
only got a blue one. There we go. Whoa. There we go.
Nicely done.
Alex says, just played a game of sharp practice today. It was like going 5 rounds with Tyson. Nice. Is that because of the casualties, or was it the rules, or what was that? That sounds interesting, because I've seen you've started to paint some French cavalry. I think the game Alex was playing was the day after Waterloo, I think, with the French retreat and KGL and Nassau chasing the French off. Then I don't know why, but I've always loved the uniform of the Nassau during the Napoleonic Wars. That green with the sort of off yellow
green,
belts.
Nice.
So Alex says, not knowing the rules, but also the heavy casualties.
Yeah. I've always got a bit of an affiliation to the King's German Legion, because I used to do reenactment with the King's German Legion artillery.
Okay.
So that was tremendous fun playing with cannon.
Yes.
So whenever I see the KGL pop up, I'm interested.
Alex says here something that I think about almost every day of my working life at the moment. My poor brain. That's generally my default state, as I can worry about my poor brain. Reenacting something I've absolutely never considered before, but I think it's something that's incredibly fascinating, and how people bring this living history to life. At Blore Heath, just down the road from me, there used to be a reenactment there every year on the anniversary of the battle. And the detail that these guys go into, so much so that there's nothing 21st century allowed on site. It's all got to be authentic to the 15th century, or as authentic as it can be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's been very well. It has been a major part of my life. It's actually how I met my wife, was through reenactment.
Brilliant.
On it was a paid reenactment down in south of Spain. So it was Peninsular War, and we were down for the 200th anniversary of the Battle of Albuera.
Oh, my favourite Peninsular battle.
Excellent. And but yeah, so I think it was something like, it was a 30 quid buy-in, and you got a coach ride down, all sort of everything included, including food and whatever. And I spent the entire time talking to this lovely lady. And then when we got there, it was an absolute disaster. Well, there was we turned up and we were doing what they call authentic camping. So we had our canvas tents out, and the organizers had left food, but we ended up turning up late because there was 2 coach loads of reenactors, and there is a collective noun for reenactors, and I probably can't repeat it on a live stream. But by the time we got there, it was nigh on the middle of the night, and so the food that they'd left for us was just a heap of raw meat.
Oh, great.
So we looked at this 5 kilo bag of chicken, and we're like, we're probably not going to eat that. So we had a few drinks.
Walk away.
Very early in the morning. Well, it did, and we thought it had walked a really long way away, and then the sun came up. And it really hadn't got anywhere. It was interesting. But then, I mean, other than odd moments, I mean, I had mild concussion from an incident with a cannon nearby us and all this kind of stuff. But all in all, was a jolly good time. So
well, he came back with a wife, so it can't have been that bad.
Exactly. And that, but no, do you know, it was absolutely amazing experience. You know, something that will live with me forever. It was the Spanish police had decided to join in, and they'd done them. Well, it was the mounted police, and they had come as a French cavalry unit, and having even just, I think there was 60 of them charging up the hill at us was absolutely terrifying. So for
was.
those who actually stood in front of people who intended on killing them, really gave you a sensation of, well, even just a small sensation of just how horrifying it would be. So yeah, but
I've been in a training situation where I've had 6 horses galloping up behind me to sort of come through where I'm standing. And that was terrifying enough with just half a dozen, thinking they're gonna run into me.
Yeah.
And I'm standing. I can't turn around to look at them. I'm facing forward. I've got about 8 guys either side of me, and we had to step to the left to allow the horse through. And I'm thinking, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'd suddenly forgotten which was left and which was right as the thundering close. So 60 of them charging up the hill must have been quite a sight.
It definitely was.
There's been quite a few videos up this week, or it was probably last week now for Waterloo Day. What was it? 8 days ago now, wasn't it? So, of the 200th reenactment of Waterloo, which looked pretty impressive.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go to that because the powers that be wanted the reenactment to be very particularly male-orientated reenactors, and so they actually put a limit on international groups coming with women and children. And so by that point, I already had 2 kids and wife, and it was a kind of choice of, well, am I going to be that selfish and go on my own? Or are we going to use all of, I mean, there's a group of 20 of us, and I think there's 1 woman and or 1 child for every 5 men. So for me to go with the family would have meant that no other women or children could have gone from the group. And we just thought, it was an unfair scenario to be in. So I skipped the 200th anniversary, but I had gone to the 199th anniversary. So I have been there, and we got to camp in the inside the grounds of Hougoumont, and that was bone chilling. That really was an amazing experience.
I've been to Waterloo probably half a dozen times, I think, but not for some considerable time. And I know there's been a hell of a lot of work done around Hougoumont, and apparently you can now stay in Hougoumont, can't you? I think it's actually above the gatehouse, a room above the gatehouse, something like that. But apparently it's very spooky. Staying there.
No, absolutely not. Just camping in what I suppose would have been it's not the orchard because that was across, but just camping within the walls, and seeing the sort of the damage that's still there, obviously not been repaired. No point trying to repair all little bullet holes, but musket ball holes. I don't know, what do you call them? But it is a truly fascinating experience.
And were others camping on the field as well, or was it just yourselves in the Hougoumont?
Oh no, so I think the entire sort of allied contingent was within the grounds. So where you've got the main sort of main farmstead, is then that the bit kind of leads off from it. Was where everyone was camped, and it really was spectacular walking around because it was still completely international even when we went. So just getting to see and meet other people who do exactly the same thing as you was wonderful.
Just about every time I've been, and certainly the last time I went, which must have been 7 or 8 years ago now, there's always been some French reenactors just hanging around close to the Lion Mound, just up the road from La Haye-Sainte. But it's a special place, certainly. I haven't, despite being there half a dozen times, I've not really done the full sort of battlefield tour. It's always been a last minute, just going for the morning or something. So I'd love to have spend some real time there,
absolutely,
and walk the fields. About half an hour ago, Steve, I was going to ask you what you were painting.
Sorry.
No. The whole purpose of this is to ramble about nonsense. that might just keep people painting through the evening. And just before I come to you, Steve, sorry, just hold. Oh God, I've taken my glasses off again. It's this from Friends of General Haig. Battlefields can be spooky places. Edge Hill has an odd atmosphere at night. I agree. Just about every battlefield I've visited, it's I think the best example I can give is in Ypres at the Menin Gate.
Yeah.
The very first time I went with some colleagues from work, and we would go for 4 or 5 nights, always around the time of Remembrance Day, so we could go down to the Remembrance Day service at the gate. But the first time I went was probably 2 or 3 days before Remembrance Day, and there was a freezing cold fog billowing through the gate, and it was like, and the hair stood up on the back of my neck, because it was like the ghosts of the BEF or the British Army marching up the Menin Road to their doom. It was a spooky experience. But Steve, I'm shining the spotlight on you.
Oh, sorry.
It's just otherwise distracted.
Shining the spotlight on me. Well, I'm not actually painting tonight.
Sorry?
I'm not actually painting tonight.
You're not painting?
I'm not actually painting tonight.
You're not painting?
Oh, mate.
He's got your knife. Put the knife down, Steve. Oh, right. Okay. You've got the 15mm Peter Big Wars of the Roses. You paint every night, which is why my jaw was about to drop.
I do.
You paint every night. So preparing. Oh, this is this a new one?
Just a sample of what I've been painting.
Lovely.
It is John Marquis of Dorset.
You, I'm stealing your idea, Steve. I hope you don't mind. To represent to sort of define retinue
the levy
bases. I think that's a far better idea than changing the number of figures on the base.
There you are. There's a levy command.
Yeah. So the archer denotes that we have levy.
Archer denotes his levy
troops. But you've still got a knight on there leading them, haven't you?
Yeah, because there are so many knights and nobles involved.
I love the idea. I think it's cracking.
You just get so many flags.
Yeah.
You can get so many flags, and they're so nice. It seems like a good idea. So,
absolutely.
You've really steamed along with that project, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm going well at the moment. I've just got the last. I said I had the archers arrive on Friday, so I've got all the models now for the Lancastrians for the troops spree now. So I've got all the models available. I just got to paint them, prep them, paint them. So I've really dropped doing anything else. I mean, I said I was doing 6mm Germans. They're sat there for a couple of units of those waiting to finish. A few other bits and pieces, but everything's been dropped because I'm just enjoying.
Alex is jumping out. Thanks very much for popping in, Alex. Much appreciated. We are a fledgling podcast on the YouTubes, and you were contributing 25% of our entire audience. So
come back.
Yeah. No, it's going to catch up hopefully on the upload later. But thanks for coming in, mate. It's very much appreciated.
Means a lot. Yeah.
Cheers, Alex.
So yeah, you're sort of knuckling down on those and putting everything else to one side for the moment. So that's a bit unusual for you, isn't it? Because you do flitter around.
Oh, I do. I'm completing that painting butterfly.
You were on the Mantic live stream earlier on, weren't you? Well, that's
yes, I was. Yeah.
You're in a very unfortunate position then when you froze for a second on my screen.
Was I? Oh, dear. Yeah.
There you go. You're frozen again.
Yes, I was on the Mantic live stream.
Yes. So, what's your comments on?
You're freezing now, Sean, which is even more worrying.
I know, mate. To be honest, I watched back the original show, and we were all of us freezing at various points.
Yeah.
What do you think of the live stream, mate?
Yeah, it was alright. Yeah, I quite like the
I
light
like the
screen.
halfling lawnmower.
The halfling lawnmower.
Nice.
Yeah.
Problem is, I got some
Think about
scouting
it.
army already, so
Yes. Yeah. I
means
haven't.
I need to buy more halflings. I've got a load of halflings on order from TC Combat as well.
Oh, I remember. Yes, you went in for that, didn't you? With the kick, was it the Kickstarter?
Yeah, Kickstarter. So
Yeah.
I got some. Pegasus is coming. Pegasus.
Very cool.
Pegasus Knights coming. I didn't go crazy.
Change
Just
for you.
a few add-on bits.
I thought you were going to say just a few hundred.
Yeah.
Well, no, as I said, when you got I've got a large, about 3.5 basin point halfling army anyway. So
Yeah. How many do you need, for goodness sake?
it's just as I said, it was more just getting the extra bits and pieces.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff was like character models and that. Cause they've done a lot of the old in the style of the old GW Bretonians. But in halfling, so you like the Green Knight and stuff like that. And,
yeah.
And the Fey Enchantress, but instead they've gone down the halfling route. So I had to purchase a couple of those just for no other reason that they just look cool. So
I have to say, I'm very tempted. The only thing that's possibly going to hold me back is I've got so much already that isn't painted. I mean, that's a ridiculous statement, I appreciate, from a wargamer, because when has that ever stopped us?
I'm almost offended by that statement.
I know. In fact, can we have that retracted from the record? Can we have that retracted from the record? I never said that.
Edit.
I'll edit that on the for the release. So undoubtedly, I will pick some up. I will probably be going down the sensible route, as opposed to buying the mega army and a few extras. I might just buy as they get released individual as units, and take a slow burn approach to them, I think.
I'll probably just pick up the bits that I need to add to my army, new units, because I've got nothing in my army at the moment that I could use. Really, it's the trolls being ridden by halflings. So
yeah, that's a unique take, isn't it?
That's right. Same with the lawnmower troll. I've got nothing in the army at stands that I could use as that. So I won't bother with like the infantry and the cavalry and stuff like that, because I have loads of those already. So.
Yes. Did you watch it yourself, Tom, then?
I caught bits of it. I kind of dipped in and out, and then went back and kind of picked up the highlights afterwards. So, yeah. But I did skim certain bits of it completely off. So, yeah.
Armada, for some reason, isn't quite grabbing me at the moment. I know me and you have spoken about this, Steve, haven't we?
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I play... I was going to say, I play Black Seas, so for me the kind of appeal was just not there, because I've effectively already got the game.
Yes.
I'm quite happy playing it as just a historical game.
Yeah.
And adding orcs and elves and whatever to a game that I don't think really needed it, it's just not it's not going to catch that attention. But
no.
But I mean, adding flyers, although I mean it does sound entertaining. I think it's, having played Cruel Seas as well, where there's torpedoes which are, impossible to deal with at the best of times. The idea of having something that flies, just, I don't know. Like you said, it doesn't quite tickle the right way, shall we say.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where that goes.
I think it's like everything else, though, isn't it? It's a matter of having the time for these games.
And this is a point that myself and you have spoken about, isn't it, Steve? That there are so many games out there, and there is only so many hours in the day.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't stop us from investing all the time, but you have to sometimes just have that reality check to think, when the hell am I going to play? It's a bit like Overdrive. So I've been aware of this game for some time now, and it does interest me, I've got to say. And it does look like it's going to be one of those beer and pretzels type games where you can play in an hour. Perhaps at the end of an event, you could, at the end of a day's gaming, in an event, you could play that, couldn't you? You could just throw it on the table. So I'm sort of more inclined to go down the route of Overdrive. But Armada just seems a bit more of an investment.
Oh, yeah.
Little Legions, hang on. I missed a couple of comments here. So Little Legion says, painted a big orc army a while back, never use it. Yeah, I saw that, mate. That's lovely. You should get it on the table because Kings of War is the best fantasy game ever.
I'd agree with that.
Without a doubt. The Armada ships look nice. We are a Mantic-friendly podcast as well. All three of us have imbibed of the Mantic catalogue from time to time.
I've said it many a times. You know, I mean, I've played every single edition of Warhammer Fantasy.
Yeah.
And I had a great time playing it, but Kings of War is so much better again.
Yeah.
So much.
Yeah.
Tell us why, Steve.
Tell us why. It's the ease of the game, I think. It's just like one of these type of games that where literally, you know what I mean? It's so quick and easy to play. It's not a complex, basic set of rules, but there's just enough tactics involved.
The one constant criticism I see is that there's not enough flavour and not enough. I suppose you call it chrome. Not enough depth. There you go.
I wonder though if that's coming from people who are so used to the Games Workshop model of force feeding you absolutely every aspect of the lore, and then novels.
I think without fail, Tom. I think without fail, everybody that says that is coming from a Warhammer Fantasy background, where you've been spoon-fed everything lore-wise and mechanic-wise. If you strip Warhammer Fantasy Battle down to its bare bones, it's a mechanic, or the base mechanic hasn't changed ever since the game was released, really.
I was going to say, the mechanic's older than I am, so
The problem is with Warhammer Fantasy is it wasn't so much the basic mechanic, it's what they keep trying to bolt on all the time.
Precisely.
Bolt on this, bolt on that. And before you knew it, literally you had play competitively, you had to spend hundreds and hundreds of pounds if you wanted to keep up with all the books that were being released.
And my biggest beef with it, I think, over the years was the Codex creep, or the army book creep. So I think my biggest involvement with the Warhammer Fantasy was 6th edition launch, the change from 5th to 6th, which was a huge change, wasn't it? In how the game was played, certainly with the magic system anyway. And you had that Ravening Hordes booklet that came out, and you suddenly got this even playing field, where every army list was in one little pamphlet. Whether they were balanced or not was a different question, but everybody used that Ravening Hordes, and then
everything was set back at a certain level, wasn't it? It was
reset at ground zero, wasn't it? Yeah. But then I think it would have been either the Empire or the Orcs and Goblins book, which would have been the first two books that came out.
Yeah.
But then by the end of 6th edition, you've got the Dark Elves and the Demons, which were just horrific.
Yeah.
By then, even the Wood Elves.
When I got into it.
Yeah.
And I ended up with going to tournaments with an Empire gun line.
Yeah.
Because although the Codex creep meant that there was always something juicier, the fundamental issue of having guns in a predominantly melee system just showed up time and time again. But like you said, you were saying you ended up with the Demons, and you're just like, right, what do I do against them? Because everyone's getting a save regardless.
Yes.
And I think it was the only time I ever really struggled to enjoy a game was against a demon player. But
when you literally had characters that would start off with a 2+ armor save, and then they'd have a ward save, and then they'd have a magical save. It was like ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
And of course, the other thing was, and this is probably still true to a certain extent for any game, is the net listing that goes on. So the guy, we used to run an internal GT at the Stoke Club, and we'd usually have 12 to 14 players playing over the course of a day. But one guy had got a dwarven gun line, and the dwarves didn't move. And they just stood there and shot the crap out. And I used orcs and goblins in that GT, and I might as well have had a dustpan and broom.
Yeah,
And just swept my figures up. End of turn 1, sweep them away. End of turn 2, sweep the rest of the army away. Good game, thank you.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? It reached a point where, like I said, I was doing this at tournament level, that a friend of mine sat down and we're just going, right. So it was, I mean, I can still remember the army lessons years later, but there's 40 handgunners, 2 steam tanks, 4 cannons, and a bunch of wizards. One of them had a crystal ball, which meant that at any point during any turn of the game, he could measure 24 inches.
Jeez.
In every direction. Yeah, so you say, oh, I'm going to have to do my guess range now. So here's a mechanic that breaks everything that is guess range. I'm just going to measure 24 inches out this way. So
happy days.
That was a thing. That was one of the worst things about it. It was the gotcha moments.
Gotcha.
There's always seemed to have so many gotcha moments. I remember playing it in a tournament. So I was quite heavily into the tournament scene as well. And I remember playing a tournament, and I was playing with a high elf. So it was quite elite. I had the cavalry, it might have even been the whole cavalry. Like I came up against the orc and goblin player, and he had, what was it, the dance of Gork or the foot of Gork, or whatever it was, wasn't the
foot
spell?
of Gork.
Oh, the foot of Gork, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
it shows how sort of bad it was. I remember it.
He cast it first turn. He cast it. So I'm set up. All set up. He's cast it on the first turn. Like gets this spell off, and literally he stomps
all over your arm.
He stomped on every single one of my units.
Yeah.
Literally, by the time you got to imagine, I had an elite cavalry force, so I didn't have a lot of troops.
No.
So literally, by the time he had finished, I probably had about 3 models left on the table.
Oh mate.
And it's like, well, that was an interesting game, then, wasn't it?
I can't remember what edition Purple Sun spell came.
Oh goodness me!
Whether it was 7th or 8th, you're both groaning, so you're both aware of what I'm talking about. But essentially, you cast a spell and the unit's gone, and you think, okay, well, that was fun. I've got nothing to defend against that. Sorry?
Yeah, they even had that in 40k, didn't they? They had a vortex grenade. You
Right.
just threw it, and then as soon as it went off, anything it touched, it just like evaporated.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So just like put a template out. Oh, you're touched. That unit's gone.
I think it's all credit to a company that is massive because they found a way of milking money.
Yeah.
But as they then transitioned over to Age of Sigmar, there was a bit of me that was missing that grand fantasy battle game, and in some ways to drag it back round to Kings of War. I think Kings of War did exactly the right thing of going, well, this is kind of what you've been playing, but without all that bit that we've just spent the last 10 minutes going was miserable. And
I
think the fact that we all remember those moments with all the other games and life that we've had since is telling of itself.
I must have played in tournaments probably at least 60, 70 games of Kings of War now over the last couple of years. And I play it regularly anyway. And I don't think I've ever had a game like that playing Kings of War. I'm not saying you couldn't, but I can't think of any game when I've been into big where you'll turn up the table and you can actually. That was another thing with Warhammer Fantasy, wasn't it? You can actually go to a tournament, you could turn up the table, and you go, oh, so what army you got? Oh, Dark Elf. So you'll have this in your army.
Absolutely.
You go, how do you know? The next table, what are you going? Dwarves, right? So you'll have this. How do you know? Like, the Kings of War. You turn up, you go, what you got? Oh, I got orcs. Oh, how did you set that orc arm? Oh, well, I got. Oh, that's a bit different to what I'm used to playing. Or
But also, do you know what? Something I've really loved seeing was the so where I'm down on the south coast near Bournemouth, we go to the Beachhead event, Entoyment Run.
Yes.
And there was someone who'd done a which army was it? I can't remember. I can't remember which army he was playing as, but he'd he'd used plastic sort of toy fish, an aquarium sort of plants to represent it, and it was just, there was something absolutely wonderful seeing that someone's hobby was going in and raiding the aquarium section of something like B&Q, but it stood out because it wasn't just, you know, and that was the other thing is, you know, what army you've got. Well, I know exactly which models you've got. It was lovely seeing this fantastic array of ridiculous plastic fish. But yeah, just
bit of creativity there.
Absolutely.
I said, the thing is with GW, you can't knock them because, you know what I mean. They're they're there to make money, and they make some lovely stuff.
They absolutely.
I am shocked sometimes when I look at the prices of their stuff now, but you know what I mean. The quality of it, you can't knock it.
They're still
the
making
more people they bring into the hobby is it's a good thing, isn't it?
Listen, I've had far more fun times playing Games Workshop games than I had bad.
Oh, definitely.
Games.
Definitely.
But that would be down at my club. Events, for whatever reason, just never really clicked with me. But I've had some great times and playing all the games. I've never played much 40k, but I enjoyed it when I had a little game of it. Space Hulk, you know, I think you struggle to find a better game than Space Hulk just to while away a couple of hours of fun and entertainment. Blood Bowl I've played in the past. What else have I played? Epic, really enjoy Epic. And if ever that was re-released in the proper form as opposed to Adeptus Titanicus, then I strongly suspect to be interested. And I'll be very interested in the old world, whatever that is, when it eventually appears. Whether or not I buy into it is a different matter, but I'm really interested to see what they come up with.
Yeah, I mean, I've been taking part in a first edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay with some really lovely chaps, and it is fun playing in that world they created. And it's
I'm in a Wolf campaign at the moment.
Fantastic.
That we play on the Tuesday with the latest edition. Fourth, I think it is. But the old world is just so full of character. It doesn't take an awful lot for you to picture yourself walking down some Reichland street and knowing what you'd be seeing. There's that setting there already, isn't there, for you to dive into?
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? It's something I've really liked that Mantic have been doing by creating. Is it Panathor?
Panathor now, yes.
Yeah. But it was, you know, the live stream today really kind of did it for me in that want to get a halfling army. I'm pretty sure in the background, when they showed you like the artwork, there was an orc mowing the lawn in a halfling village. And there was something about that it really resonated, because I don't know if you remember when GW brought out the Blood Bowl novels.
Yes.
I think they brought out a trilogy. They have a wonderful descriptive moment in that of, you know, there was fighting and now there's Blood Bowl, and so no one fights anymore because they have a game. And it was this, it always gave this beautiful image in my head of, you know, you'd walk down the street and there's just a family of orcs having a spat over the ice cream that they've spilt, and just that being transposed over into the Mantic side of things. That was a really lovely moment to see, because it's just embracing that it is fantasy and it doesn't have to be serious all the time. It's just,
there's a lot to be said about that, isn't there? Because particularly in 40k, the grimdark 10 seconds to midnight or 10 minutes to midnight, whatever the phrase is, where everything is doomed and everybody is gloomy and nobody ever cracks us a joke. Well, Caiaphas Cain, I suppose. I quite enjoyed those.
Well, that's about it,
but that was about it. But I think the Blood Bowl side of the Games Workshop Warhammer Fantasy brought that bit of humour in, didn't it?
It did, yeah. Really.
But I suppose there's a feeling that some of it maybe took itself too seriously.
I think modern not modern, more contemporary 40k has lost a lot of that grim dark as well, though.
Right.
So from what I mean, I still dabbled in 40k up until I want to say last year, but I have to remember that 2020 did happen.
No, it didn't. No, it didn't.
Yeah. No. 2020.
It was a shower moment.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I was still playing up until 2019. I've got my Black Templar Primaris Space Marine somewhere, but it was coming back into that side of the hobby and realizing that people are now more worried about the emotional connection Space Marines make with random people in the novels. I know I'm picking, one or two very specific examples when I say that, but even the fan fiction had gone from gratuitous violence to wondering why can't a Space Marine love an Inquisitor or a Sister of Battle. And I was just like, because they don't have time. There's too much murder, death, kill, to quote another sci-fi, I suppose. But
and what about female Space Marines?
Well, this is it. But then you got your nuns with guns, so problem solved.
There just seemed to be an outcry over diversity within the Space Marine ranks, doesn't there, from time to time? And I know people get quite heated in their discussions about this.
Yeah, I mean, I've having worked for GW through a bit of one of those, my opinion was always it's completely fictional. Yeah. So if you want to put tits on a Space Marine, excuse my language, if you want to add anatomical differences to your plastic toy soldiers, be my guest.
Yeah.
I don't care. At the end of the day, they're just coloured chips.
Yes.
Have more expensive components. I think it was, and the oddest one I ever had was, why aren't Space Marines gender neutral? And I said to the person, well, they are, because if you go through the background of Space Marines, I'm pretty sure it used to say they were chemically neutered. Yeah. Because they didn't need Space Marines to reproduce. And it's when you reach that point in the conversation, you go, it's all fictional characters.
It's all made up.
Yeah. This is like wondering whether Gandalf should have got it jiggy time with Galadriel just because they shared a look once in that book. You just think it doesn't matter. They're make-believe. But if that's where you need it to go, fine.
Yeah.
Go and have your Lehman Russ fantasy, but
slash fiction, I think they call it, don't they?
That's it. Yes.
Yeah. It's an interesting one because I've completely forgotten what I was about to say. That's old age for you, folks. No. It's me. It's old age. There's a incredibly important point I was going to make, and it's gone. It'll come back to me. It'll back to me.
All right.
Yeah, but so I mean, I've always enjoyed I've hugely enjoyed the Horus Heresy series. The vast majority of it, anyway. There's one or two less than stellar entries in it. I haven't read any of this sort of concluding chapter, Siege of Terror. I've not read any of that yet. But I've always loved the background of 40k. But for whatever reason, not really played the game very much. I don't know why. I just I bought into probably 3rd, 4th, 5th, and maybe 6th editions, but never got really very far with it. Oh, I know what I was going to say. There are people who are that fanatical about the 40k fluff and background and lore that they can quote it as though it's real history.
Oh, yeah. I will admit that I was one of those people once upon a time.
There's nothing wrong with it.
No. Oh, goodness me. I could tell you I think there was one point in my life I could tell you where each piece of a model came from the Games Workshop range down to like arms and whatever.
Yeah.
And this was before I worked for them.
Oh, really? That's why you got a job then? That's why they employed you?
Just desperation, I think, is why they employed me. But
just let me say hello. Say hello to.
We've got someone popped in from Lancashire, haven't we?
From Lancashire. Hang on. Yorkshire.
I'm
I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Listen, he's only here for a little while. He'll disappear. He'll disappear. It's Ken. Hi, Ken. How are you?
You're right, buddy.
He popped in. He did say he would do.
Hi, Ken.
Yes, he does live over the other side of the pond.
Only joshing with you.
Yeah, of course you're only joshing. I mean, you're from the West Country, Steve.
Exactly.
I mean, give me 6.
All we got down there is pirates and farmers, mate. That's it.
And cider.
Pirates,
Scrumpy.
farmers,
Scrumpy,
and lots of cider.
Scrumpy.
That's all we got down there.
And according to Ken, Tom, you practically live in France, I think, don't you?
Well, I mean, yeah, I might as well just be in the ocean and give up at this point.
It's south of Sheffield.
Yeah.
Little Legions says, let me see if I can read this. There we go. I'm with you, Sean. I'm really into the fluff of 40k, but not a massive fan of the game system. I do use my models to play Grimdark Future, though. I think that's is that the one-page rules? There's certainly a fan sort of edit of 40k that is either 1 or 2 pages, and it's got quite a following. So it doesn't follow the usual sort of upgrade of codexes and all that kind of stuff. But I do apologise, Ken. We've veered off. We had intended to do some talking around the 100 Years' War, but we seem to be talking a lot about Games Workshop. Yeah, the Little Legion says yes, the one-page rules. So, are you aware of those, Tom?
No, do you know what? It is honestly the first time I've heard about those, but they sound quite intriguing.
Yeah, it might be worth you just having a pop onto Google Grim Dark Future one-page rules. It'll come up, so it'd be worth you.
Yeah, be careful what you Google for with Grim Dark Future.
Yes, no, I think you'll be all right. As long as you don't have a slip of the finger again.
Oh dear.
No finger.
We won't repeat the.
I was just going to say, I'm not saying anything.
We won't repeat the joke about Matt Hancock, our former health secretary. Yeah. I thought this was for historical game. Right, here we go. Ken.
Historical.
Just because you've said it. Oh my goodness, it looks like Little Legion's a Yorkshire lad as well. All 3 a bargain for us Yorkshire lads. Well, let's talk about the Wars of the Roses, shall we? I'm
painting up Lancastrians at the moment. So
Lancastrians, right? The goodies.
The goodies, yeah.
I don't mean Tim Brooke Taylor and I've forgotten the other guy. Bill Oddie. Who was the other one? Graham
Gardner.
Anyway, Gardner. There you go. Thank you.
My time.
Yes, before your time, mate. I keep forgetting you're so young.
Sorry.
Whippersnapper.
I'll grow up soon.
Tom, you came up with a very interesting concept.
Thank you. That's a very modest way of saying you helped.
Ken says here, White Rose, White Rose, White Rose. I think that's a shopping centre, isn't it? Somewhere near Leeds.
Oh, it's not like White Lightning up north then.
The White Lightning, yeah. Yes,
he must be a Leeds United supporter then.
Don't go there with him, mate. Don't go there with him.
On their badge?
They do.
It's nice having you on, Ken.
Yeah. We love you, really.
I had to get that one in. I had to get that Bradford. One. Sorry, Ken.
Bradford forever. Talk us through this sort of counterfactual imagination style concept that you've thought up.
Cheers. So, having read about the imaginations, as I always used to deliberately mispronounce it, sort of wargaming, it's always just sat in the back of my head of that'd be really fun, but I could never think of anything to really fit it with. Yeah. And then I've spent how do I know? I've spent the last decade and a half really kind of loving reading about the 100 Years' War. Predominantly, it was just the latter end, sort of Agincourt and onwards, because there's a certain amount of I don't know if you'd agree, but there's a sort of level of how to describe it. there's a bit more glamour, I think, to the way people see the 100 Years' War, because Agincourt was such a fantastic victory, and then we just forget the rest of it.
Yes, where it all went downhill.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the next
That was
30 years
War, wasn't it? It was literally the 100 Years' War was just Agincourt, wasn't it? That's it.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah,
I think it should have only been the 78-year war.
Yeah.
Rebranded.
It's the 116 wars with 2 breaks and a plague.
Yeah, there you go.
And it's but I mean, the 100 Wars fascinated me because I think I naively kind of got into it going, oh, knights in shining armor when I was younger. And then when I got proved wrong that the knights in shining armor really weren't the main part, but it was the muddy nutters with their bows. It really kind of captured me. But I've made so many plans in the past to try and do the Battle of Agincourt, the Battle of Poitiers, Verneuil, or there are so many. And that's it. There's Cressy, even going down to like Castillon. Some of the ones where the English actually lose. No, shouldn't really look at those.
We are talking counterfactuals now, aren't we?
Well, yeah, this is it, and it's what really piqued my interest. So there's, I think she's sort of, I don't want to say the head of the humanities faculty at Southampton University, but the Professor Anne Curry, who is one of the leading experts on the Battle of Agincourt.
I've got her book on that. That was really good book.
Yeah, they're amazing, aren't they? The sort of the Southampton University history department created this database, which you can go on completely for free, and it has a list of all of the indentured, essentially, in such British or English soldiers. So because by the time of Edward III, they were paying soldiers to make sure they actually turned up and didn't just do 40 days and go home. There are records, but when it comes to Henry V, so you're looking at sort of 1413 onwards, there's some really fantastically well kept records of the soldiers, and that we're talking from archers to billmen, men at arms, knights, all the way up to the top. And this database has all of that, so you can search your family name, you can search a company, or there's a lot of detail that you can go through. And it turned out there were 2 godsons, so namesakes during that sort of latter part of the 100 Years' War. One that would have potentially been at the Battle of Agincourt, because what they kind of took was any soldier that was garrisoned at Harfleur, which is where the English sort of besieged and then waited before they went to Calais via Agincourt. But if they were garrisoned at Harfleur and then appeared at Calais a couple of weeks conveniently later, the assumption is that they fought in the Battle of Agincourt. So there was a godson there, but there was also a godson at Orléans, which famously was besieged by the French and some horrible woman. And they successfully,
15, wasn't she?
Yeah, well, no excuse. So that's it. This teenage girl who was able to inspire some very downtrodden men. I think it's fantastic history. But so there was a godson who was on the payroll of Orléans at the time of the French siege of the city, and then is never recorded anywhere ever again. Right. So inevitably had a sticky end.
Yes.
But it's things like that really kind of brings it home that they're real people when you find a namesake. For me, you were mentioning earlier sort of going to the Menin Gate. I mean, I went when I was 14, and you see a family name and it just sends that chill.
Yes.
So years and years and years of trying to go, I'd love to play this, but I want to do 10-1, 40-1 scale or whatever, and just never feeling like it was plausible because I was so fixed on the history side of it. And then I mean, we're lucky we got Ken here, because it's predominantly his I was gonna say fault, but it's his inspiration, I guess, on those larger games. And sort of seeing the work that he's produced really inspired me to just go, it can just be lots of figures on the table and that be the fun of it. But again, I kind of, I sat there for a couple of days going, I could definitely do the Battle of Cressy. That'd be really good fun. Except it wouldn't, because it wouldn't really be a battle. It'd either be reproduction. For all intents and purposes, just a process of pushing models with no rules because you know the answer, or having to fight the vagaries of handicapping one army over the other. Which I know it has its place, but for me, that's not what wargaming is about. You know, if you're told you're the French and you have to be completely incompetent, it's a bit. I always think it's a bit unfair.
For me, this is why something like Agincourt would be such a difficult battle to recreate. Ken's there said, yes, that's it.
I do blame him, yeah.
Well, it's the purpose of your podcast, Ken, to inspire people like Tom to go big or go home, I think is the phrase.
Exactly.
But Agincourt is just would be such a difficult game, wouldn't it? Because of how the history played out of we killed thousands of French and lost very few Englishmen because of the situation on the day and how we deployed the archers.
Yeah, I mean, you take it down even just to if you were to put it into a war game scenario, I've always kind of looked at it as, you know, you've got to have 3 French commanders who don't want to talk to each other, but all want to be the first one to attack.
Yeah.
And then you go down a step and you've got I've got a 50-50 chance of getting this right or wrong. I think it was the right wing of the French cavalry was commanded by 2 men who so publicly hated each other that one had dragged the other naked from the back of a horse through the city center of Paris, only like 3 months prior to the battle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that kind of level of complete disorganization,
How do you recreate that on the table?
Yeah, precisely. You know, and
I know that
and still get a good game
in it, and still get a game that's worth playing.
Yeah. I think you were going to say Little Wars did theirs, didn't they?
Yes, I was about to say that they did it.
Yeah. They did it really well.
Yes, they did. Yeah.
As always.
yeah. No surprise.
Yeah. But go on. What were you going to say? Sorry.
No, that was it really, to say that Little Wars managed to play it out and relatively get a good game out of it, I think. But this is the difficulty with replaying real battles, because do you replicate the order of battle and then just let the players decide on deployment and have free reign to go where they want on the table? Do you replicate the order of battle and give them the set deployments as happened on the day and still let them have free reign? Or do you give them the order of battle on the day, set them up as they were on the day, and have them forced into some sort of movement or maneuver that recreated the early stages of it, and then you look to try and turn that over? There's 1,001 different ways, and there's no right or wrong answer on how to do it. It's how you choose to do it, isn't it? It's your money, it's your choice. So have you had any sort of thoughts about how to go about it yourself then? So you've got the idea, you've got this love of the 100 Years' War.
Yeah. So I mean, one thing interesting, talking about Agincourt, it's something I approached when I was at university, was how do you make it something that you can recreate? I mean, I always tell people I studied military history. I didn't. My degree was war studies, which sounds wonderful, but it might as well have just been called 3 years of mucking about.
Sounds familiar.
And but one of the sort of final year modules was I always remember it as being like time commanders. Because one of my professors was Quentin. Was it Quentin Blake? I think was one of my tutors. He was on there as one of the advisors. But we effectively had the red blocks and push them around and tell people how to be a commander. What I did is I actually gave the French commanders 3 different times to turn up to my presentation, as such, so that they were completely disorganized. And it meant that you got 3 waves of attacks, because when they turned up, they're like, "Oh, you've started. Oh, I better join in." Unfortunately, when the 3rd person turned up, they decided to join in, whereas historically they went, "Oh no, I'm going home, thanks." But that's kind of the closest I've ever really got to that, wanting to recreate the real battles,
right?
Because even that was a headache, because you then, you'll never ever be able to be the person in that situation.
No.
Historically, Henry V, infamously decides to kill all the prisoners, all the prisoners of war, which not only kind of saw everyone's money disappearing, there's a real question on whether that was the right thing to do. But you can't, it's very difficult for modern sensibilities to kind of look at the realities in that and go, well, if you don't, they're all just going to jump up and beat you up, because you've now got more prisoners than you have guards by quite a considerable amount. So the way I kind of decided to approach it was to just ignore it.
Sounds a good idea.
Well, we will never be able to appreciate what life would have been like in the 14th and 15th century. It's an impossibility. My kids can't understand what life is like when we don't even have power cuts where I live at the moment. So touch wood, if I disappear, it's because I've cursed it. But my kids wouldn't even understand a power cut, or even rolling power cuts for that matter. And so to try and ask players, especially those who aren't into the period, to really get in that mindset, I think it's asking a lot of people.
Yes.
So instead, I decided to create this imagination scenario that actually kind of creeps all the way back to the beginning of the 100 Years' War. One of the first large-scale encounters was the Battle of Sluys.
Never heard of it.
Well, if anyone ever forces themselves to listen to the first episode of my podcast of the Hobby Health Check, I spent about 6 minutes wittering about it and not telling anyone much of anything. But the Battle of Sluys was actually a naval encounter between the English and the French. So it was pretty much the entire French Navy was guarding mouth of a river. They were chained together because at the time when you fought in these cogs, then they were just floating war platforms. So the French fleet had all sort of chained themselves together, at which point the English noticed this and went, "Oh, hang on, let's pretend to attack them." So they start panicking, and then we'll disappear off over around the corner, and then when they think it's safe, we'll pop out and surprise them. And it worked surprisingly well, because the wind and the tide changed, and it brought the English in rather fast, and it was a smashing success for the English. And King Edward III was present and was jumping about, hacking and slashing. But where I chose to differ was at that very point, because that sort of destruction of the French fleet and capturing the ships that weren't sunk just meant that the French were never really a threat of invading Britain. There was raids, there was a lot of raiding by French sort of, I don't want to say pirates, because although that is a part of it, it was also some slightly more organized groups as well.
Yes.
But it meant that there was no way for them to sort of set up a real invasion fleet. So my version is that at that point the English actually lose. The wind doesn't change in time or whatever, and so it leads to a bit of political unrest in England. The French did famously call the Scottish for support in distracting the English after the Battle of Crecy, which didn't go too well for the Scottish, but nothing went well for any of England's sort of enemies at that point.
Right.
But yeah, so the French actually win the Battle of Sluys in my version of history, and then it leads a couple of years later down the line, after some political unrest in sort of England, and then losing a lot more of their land in what we call France today. The French choose to invade, and at the moment they're invading through Plymouth. Not sure why. I think I had machinations in my head. Yeah, well, I think in my head it was one of those. The Duchy of Cornwall maybe decided it was going to demand its independence earlier than it really did. Okay. Yes, that's it. And they decide to side with the French. The French king decides to offer them some deal. I mean, Plymouth at the moment is very much an arbitrary. I've just picked a place with a port, and that will do. I had a nerd about Southampton because Southampton is the very, it's the very port where Henry V did leave England to invade France, and much in the same way Edward did a couple of times. I'm living not far from Southampton. It would make a lot more sense for me to pick that one, but there's something about the location, not being far from Portsmouth, and just it felt like it wouldn't be a sustainable place to invade. By I say I've done research. I looked at a map, went, nah, that'll do over there. And I thought the less I worry about the minutiae of it, and more kind of go down the roads of once the French turned up, they're marching wherever they're going. Anyway, long story short, it's going to end with what I call the Battle of Salisbury.
Right.
For no better reason than if I do the Battle of Salisbury Plains, is another way of looking at it, is that I could potentially have Stonehenge as a piece of terrain.
Well, that'd be cool.
Yeah, and I spent a year or two working at Stonehenge, so there's some really fascinating sort of geographical details around there that I think would be interesting to see on a medieval battlefield. The number of barrows and long barrows that are there would give wonderful vantage points, for scouts or for captains and commanders. So so it will culminate in the Battle of Salisbury after the French have refortified what is Old Sarum, the sort of the old site of Salisbury, and the English have marched down, having defeated a Scottish force, in some ways akin to the situation with Harold Godwinson and fighting Harold Hardrada and then having to fight William the Conqueror.
Right.
The idea that the English army is forced to go up north and then gets turned around when they find out that there's some more pesky foreigners from across the channel have come to pick a fight.
Right.
It's just the idea of putting the English effectively on the back foot, but still being able to take advantage of them having a defensive battle.
Yeah.
Because they know where they know the land. And the French could stay at Old Sarum, but their point is the king, King Edward will be there, and so they want to smash him and then take the crown. Because although Winchester's no longer really an important factor in the English crown by this point, it's Winchester's not far. You've got two cathedrals which are very important even back then, and then it's you hop on the M4 and you're on your way to London. So I think it's, to me, it kind of fitted neatly in a central battle with some relatively flat terrain, or at least open terrain, not necessarily flat. That just suited a medieval battle that's outside of a city by a fair few miles, so it works that way. And the plan is to just create a large battle, and keeping to 28 mil, because I love the idea of the splendor of those just hordes of figures. And having fallen in love with the Claymore casting and a couple of other companies who do some really beautiful sculpts, it definitely scratches that itch of wanting to paint big and then go big or go home. So,
yes, well, a man after Ken's own heart there. So would you look at the Perry stuff, the Perry 100 Years War stuff?
So yes and no. So a lot of the Perry stuff is for later in the 100 Years War. So I'm going to be basing mine more in the mid to late 14th century.
Okay.
Whereas a lot of what they've done is the early 15th. So they've got the Agincourt range. So I think it's what it's called.
Yeah.
So it doesn't quite fit. There is a small amount of crossover, but not enough for it to be worth picking it up. That, and I've recently taken what appears to be like an allergic aversion to plastic miniatures.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I'm really struggling to enjoy building them and subsequently painting them.
I am absolutely the same. I've talked with Steve about this before, that I just cannot abide building miniatures. It's as much as I can do to remove a little bit of flash.
Yeah.
Ken comments and says, have you thought about rules?
Well, it's a very good question. I think, I mean, it's interesting having Ken here, because I did approach him, and thank you very much, Ken, for the advice you have given. I was asking him, how does he go about creating a project for big games? And I'm not going to give away any secrets, but it's, I think I've kind of come to the conclusion, similar to what Ken was talking about, with when it comes to rules, of just buying a few that look like they'll work, and then find the one which does.
And
then the rest can be given away to whoever wants them. I mean, at the moment, it's a difficult one, to be honest. So one that's quite often recommended is Sword Point, but I had a horrendous first experience of playing Sword Point, and I came away really quite unhappy with the rule set. I mean, it was a really daft scenario where I think a commander of mine got killed because all of a sudden this group of cavalry had broken around my flank, and that was it. That was the game over. The scenario that we were playing was Romans, I think, versus Carthaginians. I was playing the Romans, and unbeknownst to me, and this kind of goes back to what you were saying about how do you deploy the army, the guy doing the demo had put the light, I don't want to say light cavalry, but effectively Numidian cavalry on both players' version of the right wing, and then the heavier cavalry, I suppose, household, I don't know what you'd call it. So, for example, my Roman cavalry was then fighting off against his Numidians, and his Gallic cavalry were fighting off against mine. And it was such a one-sided fight on both flanks, in all fairness, that it might as well just not have bothered. And so it left a bitter taste in my mouth that we weren't able to redeploy what was clearly a bad decision. But the Gallic cavalry were just able to get around and devastate what was in my reserves, effectively, without me having any control over it. So Sword Point, unfortunately, just ended up with a bit of a red mark, or sort of red flag against it.
I've had experiences like that with certain rule sets where I played it once and the experience was so bad that I just could not go back to it. So my specific one that comes to mind is Blitzkrieg Commander. Now, there's lots of fans of Blitzkrieg Commander out there, based upon the old War Master rule system of command checks. And there are people who will swear by it. There's battle reports all over YouTube, and Pendragon can do a great job with it. And I'm sure it is a fantastic set of rules. However, in my one and only game of it, which was early war Russians, which I was against early war Germans, I think I had a command roll of something like 7, and the Germans had a command roll of 9 or 10. So they could essentially just move, and do what they wanted, whereas my troops would move and then fail a command roll, and that's it. I'm stuck. And, you know, a bad workman always blames his tools. I appreciate there's an element of that I probably just didn't play them right, but it left such a bad taste. I couldn't go back to it. I thought, this is ridiculous.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because I think, especially when it comes to rules, you know, it's I don't say it's an investment because it's like 30 quid, but if you got 4 kids like I have and a very meager income, buying rule books that are just going to be complete rubbish, like especially if you've had that bad experience, you're not going to want to part with your money.
No, exactly.
And although I just said, I'm going to pick up a couple of rule books, well, fortunately now a lot of the rule books I'm looking at, I could probably get a PDF copy. So it's not a great issue. And if I do need to buy a hardcover, then there's plenty of bring and buys coming back up, and hopefully in the near future, which will have a couple of rules that are floating.
Have you seen any particular set, or have any caught your eye in your early scans around?
So I was actually showing you guys earlier, sort of talk about it now. I was found the copy of Poleaxed, which is the Lance and Longbow Society's rules, which will fit. But I think that's very much it's the ugly stepsisters trying to get their foot into Cinderella's glass shoe. I'll probably cut off the toes and get it to fit. But I've always seen, from reading through them finally today, they do suit that more War of the Roses period.
Yes.
And although a lot of it's very similar fighting, I mean, I'm getting really snobby if I'm going to say, well, I won't pick War of the Roses rules over 100 Years' War when they're doing pretty much the same thing. But I'm going to be a snob.
It's your project, Tom.
Well, yeah,
allowed
this is
to be
it.
a snob.
Yeah, and I think that when I've spent the last 3 years writing my own large skirmish rules for 100 Years' War, and I've so far written no more than about the same 6 ideas over and over. But I think that what else is there? So there's Sword and Conquest? Something like that, I can't remember. Which everyone was written by the chap who used to do Warhammer Historical.
Oh,
so Rob Broom.
You mean War and Conquest?
War and Conquest, thank you.
Yeah,
yes.
he's actually a member of my club.
Yeah, it's
no way.
I know Rob quite well. So yeah.
Hey, well that's it. Because having flicked through those rules, they felt smooth, but much in the same way as picking up something like Hail Caesar, they cover a broad history.
Mm-hmm. They do.
They're generic, aren't they? Generic ancient medieval rules. Yeah.
Absolutely.
When I used to play War and Conquest, basically, I would. I haven't played it for quite a few years, but I used to play it quite a lot. Obviously, with Rob being a member of the club. And that. I got to the period of time of playing it where I would only play Imperial. So I was only interested in playing Imperial. So I wanted to play against other Dark Age. If I got me Carthaginians out, I only wanted to play against like Romans and stuff of that period.
Yeah.
Because you get better games, in my opinion.
Little Legions jumped in there and said Hail Caesar. Was just talking about them. You see, Hail Caesar is incredibly popular, isn't it? I know that the guys at Plastic Crack Podcast, Martin, he uses them for Wars of the Roses. Yeah.
I think they've definitely got that. Yeah, I think it's because at the moment this is very much still my little love child that I'm being very protective over it, and possibly too much so, because if I want to play with, a lot, I don't know what the figure's going to be at the moment, the figure of the figures. I don't know what that's going to be yet, and it may well be that something like Hail Caesar or Sword Point or War and Conquest, maybe I need that mechanic, those simplicity aspects. Yeah, exactly. But it only takes that sort of like delving into one or two of the social medias or forums and saying, what medieval rules do you like, or have you come across that you realize that although you've heard of 10, for each one you've heard of, there's another 10.
Yeah.
And there's a YouTube channel called Medieval Warrior.
Oh, it's excellent. Excellent.
Yeah. And I mean, the chap, I don't know what it is about his voice, but he just seems to suck me in, and I listen and I listen and listen and listen. And
well, he's French for a start. He's got that smooth French accent.
Well, that's it. So it's wonderful. I mean, again, I think a lot of inspiration I got for doing 100 Years' War for a big battle came from watching some of his projects build. He's doing his Poitiers project. And so he's got some wonderful reviews of different rule sets. And I think it'll be, I'm still probably halfway through that playlist of videos.
Yeah. There's one thing for sure, Tom. Really, you've only got to please yourself, haven't you? This is your, I don't want to say vanity project, but this is your project that you're going to put a hell of a lot of work into, probably over 2-3 years, maybe even more. And the only person that you need to satisfy is yourself. I'm sure that by the time you get to the end product and put that game on for the club, and tournament or whatever, then anybody that comes along is going to enjoy themselves, because there'll be such an incredible spectacle. You'll be the master of the rules. You can game master the game if you like.
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah,
but there's only you that's got to be happy with it. It's your baby, so whether it's following a trend rule set or some obscure rule set that's available free on freewargamesrules.com. It's entirely or in fact written by yourself. It's entirely your decision, isn't it? We've got another little suggestion here. I don't know if you've looked at these yet. To the strongest.
So I haven't. I'm trying not to pull my headphone out. I haven't looked at them yet, but they are on the short list of things to go and have a bit of a deeper look into. I think fundamentally, again, this was advice from Ken. So it was build, paint, and base as you want them to be, and then make the rules fit what you've got as well. And I think it's for now I'm really enjoying just the idea of building up bases of mixed men at arms, knights and not knights. And I think in some ways also really enjoying seeing what Steve's been doing with War of the Roses. You have that mix of a couple of these and a couple of those, because I appreciate that historically we're told that the English fought in a hearse formation where you've got your two wings of archers funneling down into a 2 or 4 rank deep group of men at arms of varying, I say men at arms, but billmen, men at arms, and knights. And it doesn't necessarily need quite so much interplay between figures, but actually, let's face it, when it comes down to it, there may well be a company of archers and there's 20 of them under the Ventinar, Derek, but his brother James might have come along and he's a billman and he's got some of his mates with him as his little retinue from down the pub, and you got a couple of billmen mixed in with your archers. I want that. I think that's the feel that I'm going for. Is I want it to have a sense of this as a group of people that are defending their home, defending their home country, rather than this as a semi-professional, as early as you can get a professional force of medieval soldiers, traipsing through someone else's country just to burn and destroy everything. But in some ways, that's what I'm going to love about doing the French, to turn the sort of coin over. When it comes to doing the French, having the mercenaries is going to be a really interesting aspect, because they did rely on mercenaries to a greater extent than the English did. And so I think it's going to play nicely into making a real scenario of it as well. Just going back to the comment on Stonehenge, a friend of mine says that I have to make sure that it's only 11 inches tall.
Why?
Oh well, I think there's a Spinal Tap scenario happening with it. So
okay, right.
Yeah. But,
I got the reference.
But I think and I just do you know what, it's really freeing being able to go, I'm just going to buy toys that I've wanted to buy for years. As we were saying last week, I've got so many things that are just models I've bought to play other people, down at Entoyment or in my little group. That in some ways my hobby is their hobby, and I can't do my hobby without being part of theirs. And that's quite restrictive. And don't get me wrong, if any of my 4 chums who are listening, so we've got Dave, Sean, Pete, or John watching this, I have no issue playing you guys. I hate you all, but it'd be nice if I could lose occasionally.
Oh, woe is me.
Yeah, indeed. But I think we as a group of gaming friends have talked a few times that it's easy to get lost in playing someone else's hobby.
Right. Yeah.
And when you kind of go, well, I feel mildly obliged to be picking up this 6th project in February because someone's already painted 2,000 of whatever, or 2,000 points of bolt action, for example. And so it's going to be really nice to just be like, oh yeah, well, what have I painted this week? Well, I've painted another 4 archers, but I've also managed to do 2 more of my saga figures. And I think, like I said, it would just be freeing to have a split of not obliged hobby, but hobby with purpose. There you go. So models with a purpose to play a game next week.
Yeah.
And then I'll also have models with a purpose of being played potentially the next half of this decade or whatever.
Yeah. Well, there's an interesting point there, Tom, because on the last Oddcast by the Two Fat Lordies, they were talking about their club situation and setup. And this is similar to my club in that somebody will go down to the club with a whole game. A bit like you, Steve, actually, with Ultra Freedom that you took down Champions Hill. You go down, you've got both sides, you've got the scenery, and you put that game on for other members of the club. So you might not even play. You might just umpire.
Yeah, I didn't play in either of the games. So
the other 2, 3, 4, however many people have at it. Or there's this other model, isn't there, which is probably the Games Workshop model almost. I don't know if that, or Ancients Gaming back in the day of WRG, where you build your army and you don't care what your mates build. You could build Egyptians, and your mate could build medieval Scots. But we're going to have a game of WRG 5th edition or whatever it was back in the day. And bringing that forward, it's now bolt action, isn't it? Or any one of the fantasy games or sci-fi games that we've talked about. Saga, for instance. You build your warband, I build my warband. And there's no correlation between them historically. But you can have a game. It should be a balanced game because that's how the rules have been built. But it's an interesting one because I've on occasion I've tired of the fact that I've built everything to put a game on to take down. In fact, I remember building the Peter Pig samurai rules game. So I painted 2 armies of samurai figures, built the scenery, collected the scenery, took everything down for a game, and within 2 turns, one of the players gave up because his dice were crap. He said, I can't bear these dice. I'm not playing anymore. And walked off. And then I'm left. Okay, I sat in and finished the game off with his opponent. But that really pissed me off because I put so much effort into putting this game on. Painting samurai is no mean task, is it?
No, it's
not. It's a thankless task. So that sort of method of gaming really has peaks and wanes with me. But for something like you're doing, which is this sort of, it may be a once in a lifetime project for you, Tom, because you've got such a passion for the era that you're going to put your heart and soul into it. And then produce it for your friends to play. But then there's the other aspect where you need a 1,000-point bolt action army or whatever it is to sort of also contribute down at the club. Do you find that, Steve? Sorry, Tom. Do you find that, Steve, at your club where is it you putting on the whole thing, or are you collecting the on-trend set of rules and getting that army done?
Yeah, it's a lot of trend setting, to be honest. We don't often get people putting on games. It's more groups of people getting into things. Right. So, and then, you will get the popular thing at the moment. We're just starting a Stargrave campaign. So we've got about 8 or 10 people signed up for that. So, and then you might move on and we do things like Kings of War campaigns, stuff like that. But it's very rarely we have like situations like that the last couple of weeks where someone brings a system down and people jump on it.
Yeah.
But I had more of that when I was back about 30 odd years ago when I used to be at another club called Lincoln Barn, where they used to do a lot of like multiplayer games with people, and they used to do like a campaign and stuff like that.
Is that where you did that big Waterloo game?
No, I done that at my club now. We hired our boy. We've done it twice actually. We hired a small hall out in that. We had
so
14 6x4 tables.
That's a hell of a now that's a big game, Ken. 14 6x4 tables.
Yeah, it was massive. It was a massive game.
It's
Yeah,
a fair
we had every single regiment represented, every single troop represented on the table. We were using 1/72 scale models, like 20 mil, with I think it was, but regiments were 24 miniatures and cavalry were 12. And we had
It takes some work.
the Allies,
some working
and the
out.
Russian armies.
Imagine painting all those Prussians and then the game's over before they arrive.
Yeah, it was quite funny.
Wonderful.
The Prussians, yeah. So yeah.
I put Waterloo on at a show.
We used black.
I put Waterloo. Go on, mate. Sorry, I was just going to say I put. Oh, hang on. We've got another YouTube celebrity with us. A new celebrity, YouTube celebrity. Wargaming with Gary. Hi, Gary. Hope you're all right, mate.
Hey.
Big fan of your channel as well. I watch far more of these YouTube channels than I do of any real TV, to be honest. But Ken says just interviewed a lad who did a 72-foot game of Market Garden. I'm a small gamer. Oh my goodness! Talk about table envy. Good grief.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just saying I did a 15 mil Waterloo game, and the night before I'd been painting for about 6 months. Another solo effort, really, building everything. This was using Principles of War back in the day, so nowhere near the scale of your game, Steve. But I spent the night before the event painting up half of the Prussian contingent because I just hadn't had time. And then, yes, they never appeared on the table. So that was a complete waste of time. Sorry, Steve, you were saying.
I can't remember what I was saying, actually. Yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah, basically, except we used black powder rules, which
Ken's comment there. The table was so big it had its own buzz route.
Yeah.
Like it.
We actually, but when we set our tables up, it was quite funny actually because you obviously couldn't set up. You had to put gaps in the tables, like holes.
Right.
So you had certain areas, like you know what I mean, where we're gonna have to have a hole there because otherwise there's no way we're gonna be able to reach like across 3 tables worth of width, like you know what I mean. Like
that's a bit like the old War Games Holiday Centre where they've got sort of 3 rows of tables with the main action down the middle.
You know what I mean? That's right, yeah.
Bit of artistic license.
But yeah. Well, you got to take a little bit of artistic license. It's just a bit to play the game. But playing with ball action, we managed to get I think about 7-8 turns over the day.
Black powder, did you want?
Yeah, black powder. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was. We got a conclusion both times we played it, so which is always a bonus.
Yeah. There's a challenge for you then, Tom.
Absolutely.
14 6x4 tables for your Battle of Salisbury.
Yeah, it'd be good, wouldn't it?
I just want to ask Wargaming with Gary, make a comment to Wargaming with Gary. I love your Assyrians, mate. I've loved following the growth of your Assyrians and your various projects, actually, but your Assyrians in particular. I just think that's a beautiful ancient army. Always I've been a big fan of Assyrians, although I've never owned a single Assyrian figure in my life.
Yet.
Yeah, yes. It's a bit like Lord of the Rings, isn't there? There's people who've read Lord of the Rings, and there are people who have yet to read Lord of the Rings and will read it. So it's a bit like that. There are people who own an Assyrian army, and then me who will own an Assyrian army at some point, probably, most likely. Mind you, I'm getting on a bit now, so I think there's more wargaming behind me than in front of me.
You got those retirement years, man.
The retirement years. Well, both me and Ken are in a similar line of work and looking forward to our long retirement, hopefully, to make the very most of it. So
I was going to say just quickly with the big games. Before I moved here, we were living in Hertfordshire. And I was very fortunate to be invited to a club there called the Hearts Volunteers. Used to meet in Bishop Stortford, and that was the first time I came across a big game. And we did a War of the Roses with about 2,500 figures on the table. And up to that point, all I'd ever played was Warhammer, so it was an absolute eye opener. Well, I played a bit of World War II, but I'd only ever played sort of large skirmish. But then to be facing that was all 28mm as well. So I think that's what's in my head. But
right, that's the picture that you're sort of aiming towards.
Yeah, that and the bears that were in the wood apparently. So
the bears in the wood.
Yeah, the chap who did the rules for it had this. Well, we used interestingly we used Hell Caesar, but the chap running it, he gave every commander I think it was your jester or your ace. It was a random event that you could call on at any point in the game, and you roll a d20, consult the chart, and something would happen. So when I did mine, the nearest opponent had been eating rotten apples the night before and had soiled themselves, so they couldn't move for a turn whilst they sorted it out. But on the other side of the table, our baggage train that was trying to get off across the bridge suddenly was going through a small copse of woods, played their special card just to get it played, and a family of bears appeared from this wood. Effectively stopped the baggage cart doing anything for another turn or two.
Fantastic.
Yeah, but it was a lovely, just a really simple little detail.
Yeah,
took you out of.
I love little things.
Come on, it really zoomed it in. Yeah, so that was good fun.
I love it with
well,
the
you
games.
remember this all these years later.
Add stuff to the table as well. Add little extras, little vignettes and stuff like that.
And I think that's and that's kind of where I ended up with this idea of effectively having Stonehenge on the table. Is that arguably it's a really impassable piece of terrain. You know, it's not something you're going to be able to easily fight over or around, but having it I've been talking to the Lardies with Rich Clark's been doing his Italian Wars stuff, and he's been having that little bit of terrain that he's designed for the back corner.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, just a lovely little bit of town walls where he's going to have some of the burgers just sat there and sat watching the battle, because that's what you get in the manuscript. And I'd love something like that I have in my head. I might even sneak in a cheeky English Heritage Visitor Centre.
It's the concept though that he's come up with, that where there's this perspective as the wall sort of gets smaller as it moves away. Very much like those old, I don't know what they were called, those old drawings.
The illustrated manuscripts.
There you go. Thank you. It looks very similar to that, doesn't it? Just a comment here from Wargaming with Gary. Unfortunately, he says, I'm really good at starting armies, but rubbish at finishing them. I don't think I have a single finished army. Well, welcome to the
Gary,
club.
Armies are never actually ever finished.
No, true. They're always in a stage of progression, aren't they? Moving, as long as we're always moving forward.
That's right.
We're always, doing a little bit.
I've got multiple armies in lots of different systems, but none of them are actually ever finished.
You are the king of armies,
and you'll go. Oh, I must have that tomorrow. I must have that. I must have that. I must have that. The worst thing is you normally wear a bag and you get them out and you go, I can't be bothered to actually paint them at the moment, but at some point they will be added to the army.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
We're approaching the 2-hour mark, gents, so I think, should we just go around and have a little look as to what your hobby week looks like going forward? Steve, do you want to start?
My hobby looking forward is more war races. I said I've had these archers turn up, so I've been cleaning them up. Get as many of those as possible and carry on reading the Bloody Barons rules. So,
good. Any games planned for this coming week?
I was supposed to go to my club tomorrow to start a Stargate campaign, but with the way my bag's doing it, I'm probably not going to be playing this week. So.
I bet you can't feel it at the minute, though. How much whiskey you've drank?
Oh, I tell you, it feels like someone's punched me in the face.
Oh, mate. Not
and those over the counter medicine and is it the apple Jack Daniels?
I'm due some more painkillers. That's what it is. So
all right, you're fading.
I think about half an hour. I've had half an hour out of having some painkillers. So as soon as we finish this, I'll be like taking some pain, maybe with Jack Daniels. I wonder if I actually put some Jack Daniels in there, pop the tablet and drink it at the same time.
It's worth a try, mate.
Might work.
It's Saturday night, for God's sake. I mean, anything.
Put me to sleep.
Yeah.
Hopefully put me to sleep. Hopefully not permanently. But...
Well, if it does, it was nice knowing you, mate. Anyway.
Yeah.
But that's basically my target for this week.
Has your wife got my address, just in case you want to bequeath some of your figures?
Yeah. Some? Bloody hell.
I won't be greedy, mate. I'll just have a few.
I can have everything. I've only got 16 Kings of War armies, mate.
I know. It's a drop in the ocean, mate, isn't it?
Yeah, the drop in the ocean. So yeah. Basically, more War of the Roses, more reading that. Maybe actually jump in and buy the. I've been looking as we've been talking of our terrain and stuff like that. I might pick up that gaming mat. I've been looking at the tiny war games. So I might purchase one of those and go down that route.
Yeah, we'll have a chat about that offline.
Tom? So over to, did I get it right?
Hey, thank you. What we got planned this coming week? Possibly a game. Not quite sure of what as of yet. I've been pushing to try have a game of Water Tanker because I find it so much fun. It's a nice light one, especially when you're having to play. Where we play it in tournament with it being inside, it's masks on, and so trying to do anything too much of a head scratcher leaves you with very foggy glasses. So, probably if we play a game, it'll be something small. So like Water Tanker or Dead Man's Hand, possibly. I want to get these 3 Men at Arms finished this week, but they've come on pretty well tonight. I don't know why I hate myself. I've gone for one in white.
It's looking good to me, mate.
But it's gonna have green stripes as well. And then we've gone with red and yellow, and yellow's never the easiest.
Yellow, everybody loves painting yellow.
But I'll try and get some better pictures up of that because I'm actually pretty pleased with how that's come out. So I want to try and get those 3 done because there'll be those 3 plus the other bunch of blokes. So I can get them at least on a base by the end of the week. At least these 3, I'll be a happy man. Other than that, there's no role play game this week. That's all been put off, unfortunately. But yeah, bit of painting. So I'll pass on to you, Sean. How about you?
Can you find me though with your finger? Oh, again, we're back to Matt Hancock again. Sorry. Ken says Big Italian Wars run of games starting tomorrow. Just setting the table up, listening to you guys. Thanks for that, Ken. His Italian War stuff is just amazing.
It's astonishing, isn't it? Yeah.
And the rating knocks them out.
Yes, scary.
It's scary. Yeah. I'm sure he does work for a living, but I wonder what he does whilst he's in work. I suspect the office doors. Yeah, I suspect the office doors closed and he's painting away.
Well, I was looking at his update the other day on YouTube with the is it the Wars of the Papal States?
Yeah,
so it's got those guys there. Looking, I love the green.
Just a whole new project just popping up out of nowhere.
Yeah, so very interesting. But anyway, go on, Sean. What you got planned?
Yes, so I am in the middle of painting my pirate ships for Pieces of 8. It's very difficult to get this in anywhere close. But I've got a tray. I don't know if Ken will recognise this. I don't know if he uses that. But this is a work tray from work that was going spare, so and it's full of pirate ships. I won't tilt it too far, only because the building that they were in has been knocked down, so I sort of rescued it from the dumpster. So painting those and Wars of the Roses, similar to Steve. So I've got a lot of those on the go. No 6mm on the go at the moment. Oh, well, tell a lie. No. I'm telling a lie. I know. I've got some American War of Independence 6mm that I'm plugging away at very slowly. Gaming wise,
jump in there, Sean. I wanted to tell you, I came across, I don't know how I've managed to keep it, but I came across my receipt for my Bacchus order of American Civil War, which turns out that I ordered it 8 years ago tomorrow. And I've still painted, I'll have a look over the top here. I think I've painted about 4 strips of models. So that's it.
We are now advertising for a third seat on this podcast. Ken says mine is a lot deeper than that. Well, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it is, Ken. He's on about the tray, I think.
Oh,
I don't think it's a Matt Hancock reference. Yeah. I don't think so. Yes, you need. Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it, that you can get really sucked into a project and you get that excitement going. But then as soon as the figures arrive, or after you've done a week's worth of painting, something else comes along, doesn't it? So I feel your pain. Cheers. And other than the painting, I'm currently trying to write a scenario for the Battle of Loos from 1915, First World War, using both square bashing and Great War Spearhead in 15mm and 6mm. But probably 15mm initially, because I've got everything I need for it. I just need to get the scenario written, and I'm working with Nigel Atta over that, who wrote the book on it, and we've been communicating backwards. In fact, I persuaded him into buying an absolute ton of 15mm First World War figures. He seems to have. It's a talent of mine, Steve. I don't know if I could monetize this talent, it'd be great.
Have you got shares in Peter Pig?
Well, he's going to Lancashire Games for his. So you've got to spread the love. Okay. You've got to spread the love. Okay. I'm looking for.
You got shares in them as well, then?
Well, I can remember. There used to be a phrase many years ago at my club of spending a Sean. A Sean became. It came a quantity of money, which was roughly around about £200. So you go to a Wargaming show and so I spent half a Sean on some French Indian, because I remember going to the Allenwell show, which is the West Midlands military modelling show. Takes place in Wolverhampton, and before the doors had opened, I'd spent £200 at Lancashire Games on quite a lot of figures. Anyway, enough of that. We don't need to dive into my sordid history of spending far too much money.
Your missus might be listening.
Yeah, exactly. I've no idea where she is. So be very cautious.
She's by the door, mate. That's what.
If she is, I'm dead.
The door creaks open. Yeah.
And on the Battle of Loos, I don't know if you've seen the Little Wars TV video challenge. I think it's called the Quick Fire Battle Report or something like that.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So where you do a battle report in 10 minutes. So I'd like to do that for Loos.
Brilliant. I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah, so it's one of my two big passions. American Civil War and First World War probably equal, vying for attention certainly on my bookshelf anyway. That's probably over half of my bookshelf. Those two topics. Right, gents. Well, thanks very much for your time. We've ran over a tad. I do apologise for those who've stayed with us all the way through. We didn't reach double figures. We didn't reach double figures, but I will report that on the viewing side of things on YouTube, it's gone relatively well. I think we're closing in on 200 views.
Wow!
But numbers don't matter, do they? It's not about numbers. It's about just spending a couple of hours in each other's company, and whoever else chooses to listen in and getting a little bit of painting done and putting the hobby world to rights. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, because from time to time, these things need to be said, don't they?
They do, certainly do.
Okay, everyone who's listened and dropped in, Ken, Gary, thanks very much. Little Legions, thank you very much.
Thanks, chaps.
Who else? Yeah, who else did we have? Little Legions.
We had Alex.
Alex, yes, I think Alex may have disappeared, but thanks, Alex, and Friends of General Haig. There you go. Who's there? So thanks very much for that. We're going to try and between us sort out a sort of regular schedule, I think, for this, because I've enjoyed the last couple that we've done, and I hope everybody else has. It's been good fun. So whenever the next one is, please tune in, keep listening, play nice, keep safe, and keep rolling high. See you soon.
Cheers.
Bye.